skyscrapers high, influences our lives, but doesn't always hear our forest's cries. What gathers us together,
我们
predicts the weather, but
在
can
一起
ignore the climate
我们
warning signs.
可以预报天气，但是
Poverty, develop
仍然有很多
but
人
doesn't always
陷入贫困。我们
growing
发展经济，
inequalities.
但是不平等却在加
Defines
剧。
our knowledge and shapes our priorities, but at times is out of touch with global realities. Education is the answer and holds the key. To face our changing world, we must learn to live sustainably. And when we do, we can adapt. We can act. We can respond to our future with far greater impact. For the survival of our planet, we need to learn for our planet.
Welcome to this UNESCO World Conference
欢
on
迎来到教科文
Education
组
for
织可持续
Sustainable
发展教育
Development.
世界
I'm
大
your
会。
host, Sumi Somasganda.
我
I'll
是
be
今天
leading
的
you
主
through
持
the
人苏
conference
米，
over the next
我
few
会
days. And I
在
want
这
to
接下来
extend
的
a
几
warm
天主
welcome on
持
behalf of
大会。
UNESCO, also
我
on behalf
要
of
代
the
表教科
German
文
Federal
组
Ministry
织
of
代
Education
表
and
德意志
Research,
联
which is
邦
generously
教
supporting
育
and hosting this
和
conference.
研
And I'm
究
glad that
部，
so
欢迎
many
大
of you
家，
could
他
be
们
joining
是
us
主办方。
virtually from around
我很
the
高兴
globe.
大
We
家
have more
都
than
在全世界
2,000
通过线上的
participants
方式
with us,
参会。我
from
们有2000多
practitioners
人
to
参会，包括实
policymakers,
践者，包括
lawmakers,
政策制定
ministers.
者
We have、
法律
NGOs and
制定
students
者、
and experts.
NGO，
We also have
还有
members
学
of the
生、专
development
家
community and the
以
private
及
sector.
发
And
展
all
领
of
域
you
的，
are going to help
还
us
有
make
私营
this a
部门的
dynamic
成
and
员。
enriching
你们的
experience over
参
the
与可
next
以
few
让我
days
们今天
and
的
help us
和
launch
接下来
this
的2天的
initiative.
会议能够充满
Education for
活力，能够
Sustainable
帮助
Development
促进决策的
2030.
制
This
定。
is nothing less than equipping learners with
就
the
是
skills
让
that
我
they
们的
need,
学
the
习者
tools that they need to
拥
make
有
the
技
world a
能，
more
拥有工
sustainable
具，
place,
让
and
世
to
界
put
更有可
environmental
持续性，
education
让环
in
境
the core curriculum
环
for
境教
learners
育
around the
成
globe.
为我们
Now,
全世界
UNESCO
学
and the
习
ministry
的
are opening the door for
计
you
划的
to
核
take
心。
part of the discussion
教科文
over
组
the
织
next
敞开
few
门，
days.
让
And they
您
want
可
you
以
to help
在
put
接下
this
来2天
roadmap
参
in
与今天的
place
会，
and to breathe
让
life
大
into
家
this
能
framework,
够
to give
把
it
这
energy.
个路线
And
图
we
能够
want you
执
to take
行。
part in it. So you'll
希
see
望
that
大
there's
家
a
能够
chat
踊跃的
function
参
on
与。
your
我们
screen.
有一
There's
个
also a chat
聊
function
天
in the
功
various
能，
Zoom sessions that you'll be taking part in.
在
So
很多的
please,
Zoom
make
分
use
会
of
上
that.
也
Share
可
your
以。
thoughts and your comments with us through the course
在
of this conference.
屏幕
Now
上，大
you
家
can
看到有
also
聊天的功
engage
能。
with us on social media. You'll see our hashtag here, ESD
大
for
家看到我们
2030.
这边
That is our
有
hashtag for
井
this
号
conference. So go into social
ESD
media. You
for
can engage with us on
2030。
Facebook and Twitter. Post your thoughts and comments on this conference.
请大
And by
家
the
通
way,
过
you
社
can
交媒
also
体
join
发
us
表你们的
on
评论，
LinkedIn. We have a group
还
there
可以
called
在领
ESD that
英、
you can
推
join.
特
And just a
等
note
社交
on
平台上
languages.
发
I mentioned we
言。
have so many joining
我
us from
们
around the globe.
还有关
Well,
于
we
语言，
have
我们有全世界
5
的人们
primary
参加，我
languages
们有
available for
5种
English,
语言，
German, French,
英语、
Spanish,
德
and
国、法
Arabic,
语、
and also some partially
法
set
语、
translations in Chinese and Russian
西班牙
as
语，
well. Just go to the
还有一
bottom
部
right
分
hand corner of your screen to
大家
access
可以在
those
屏幕下方
translations.
选
And
择
if。you're on Zoom, make sure that you use the desktop client or the app to be able to access those translations. And we hope that you do so you can join as many sessions
大家
as possible.
通
Now, at
过
this point,
翻译
to
功
get
能
the
能够
conference
尽量的参与
officially
更多
kicked
的
off,
会议。
we have some welcoming remarks
我
now from
们
the
有一些
Director
欢迎词
General of UNESCO, Audrey
来
Azoulay.
自教科文组织总干事阿祖莱女士。首先，
Excellencies, ladies and
德国
gentlemen.
总理默克尔女士、各位阁下、女士们、先生们，
History becomes more and more
人类
a
历
race
史正变成教育与灾难之间的一场你追我赶的竞赛。
In 1920,
1920年，小说《世界大战》的作者赫伯特·乔治·威尔斯在当时就警告我们，现在我们面临的危险。 我们在2020年面临的不是一场世界大战，而是一场向我们的世界发起的战争，一场针对我们自己的战争，一场我们必将输掉的战争。今天的会议在这一关键时刻召开，我要特别感谢主办国德国。 我们的地球来到了崩溃的边缘。过去10年是有记录以来最热的10年，海洋吸收二氧化碳的能力已经快要饱和，100万的物种濒临灭绝。与此同时，环境危机也在造成其他危机，社会的、经济的、地缘政治的危机。2019年，气候灾难在140个国家造成2490万人流离失所，这大概相当于澳大利亚1国的人口。太久以来，我们置若罔闻、袖手旁观，眼睁睁地看着世界生物多样性崩溃丧失。太长时间，我们忽略一个事实，那就是人类的健康依赖于环境的健康，而这次的疫情毫不留情地发出了这样的警示。太久以来，我们都墨守成规，但是今天，我们的地球，我们蓝色的星球已经变得炭红。亲爱的洛朗·法比尤斯，请允许我借用你新书的标题《炭红》。我们可以改变，我们必须改变，我们可以变革我们的生活方式、我们的经济、我们的思维方式，树立以尊重自然为基础的价值观。长期行为的改变只能通过教育来实现。各位阁下、女士们、先生们，我们不是从零开始。15年前，联合国可持续发展教育10年启动。这是由日本提出来的。15年来，人们的行为已经开始改变。10年后，教科文组织全球行动计划为期5年，动员了近100个关键合作伙伴，触及了全世界3700万学生和200万教师，教育他们，引导他们了解、关注这一主题。2030年议程也定义了可持续发展目标。议程的一个核心内容就是可持续发展目标4：教育，使可持续发展教育成为该议程的雄心之一。各国以此肯定了我们社会面临着生存危机。现在距离2030年只剩下不到10年的时间，我们已经滞后了。因此，我们必须加倍努力，撬动教育这一杠杆。这正是我们这次会议的目的。参会人数超过2500人，其中包括不止75名教育部长。加倍努力，这是新的2030年可持续发展教育框架的目的。我们今天启动这一新的框架，继续并加速开展行动10年。我们强调，必须紧急地把环境放在学校教学大纲的核心位置，因为教育应该使儿童能够学习并应对他们所处时代的挑战，而这些挑战中最重大的就应该是环境。然而，现在学校的教学大纲却不够凸显环境这一主题。我们本次会议上发布的报告就指出了这一问题。这份报告也为我们的星球而学习为标题，分析了世界上50个国家的教育系统，发现不到一半的国家教育大纲提到了气候变化，提到海洋健康的国家也不到一半，提到生物多样性的国家不到1/5。关于教师的培训问题，情况也不乐观，1/3的教师完全不讲环境问题。所以我们看到环境教育在当今教育系统中只占到边缘的位置，必须要纠正这一情况。首先要更多的培训教师。我们从土著人民那里也可以学到很多。巴黎协定第7条也提到了土著人民知识。我呼吁大家都支持柏林宣言，使我们的教育系统在各个层级都赋予环境教育、可持续发展教育其应有的地位。我呼吁大家提振雄心。更大的雄心需要更大的能量，需要所有会员国的参与。在2025年，在迈向2030年走了一半的时候，实现所有会员国的教学大纲都包括环境教育。 并赋予其应有的地位。这样的雄心，教科文组织会带到格拉斯哥气候大会 COP26 以及昆明气候变化大会 昆明生物多样性大会 COP15，因为现在必须集体行动起来，我们必须利用教育这一强大的武器。谢谢。
And thank you, Director General Azoulay, for those
总干
remarks.
事，
As we heard there, the
感谢
German
您的
government is
发言。
generously supporting this conference, and we have the opportunity now to hear some welcoming remarks from the German Chancellor,
我
Angela Merkel.
们还有来
Sehr
自
geehrte Frau Generaldirektorin
德国
Azoulay,
总理的
sehr
欢迎
geehrte
词。
Ministerinnen und Minister, Exzellenzen,
感
verehrte
谢
Damen und Herren. Ich heiße Sie
总
herzlich
干事
willkommen
阿
bei
祖
der
莱女士、各位
Auftaktkonferenz zum
阁下、
neuen
女士们、先生们，
UNESCO-Programm
我热烈的欢迎你们
2030.
参加今天教科文组织可持续发展世界教育大会。
Aber auch für die Gemeinschaft. Bildung befähigt Menschen, Verantwortung zu übernehmen
所有人都有
und
增
sich einzusetzen
发
für
展的
eine
机会，这样
bessere,
社会有发展的
nachhaltige
机会。
Zukunft. Das gilt auch
让我们
mit
行
Blick
动
auf
起
die
来，
großen
让
Aufgaben
未来
unserer
更美
Zeit,
好。
welche die UN-Nachhaltigkeitsziele der Agenda 2030 beschreiben. Auch deshalb darf Bildung für nachhaltige Entwicklung kein Privileg sein, sondern muss allen Menschen überall auf der Welt zugänglich sein.
可持续发展不应该是一个特权，而是让所有人都可以享有。在我们德国，我们正在为此而努力，让可持续成为我们所有教育和培训的部分，包括在学校还有我们的青年代表。我们有很多的项目，4点项目，让在高等教育里面也开展可持续发展教育。我们德国因此呢已经做好准备，参与教科文组织这一2030年计划。我们要参与，这个计划要成功，必须要全世界都参与，在全世界实施。我们这一计划的成功，让我们可以更好地实现所有17个可持续发展目标，而柏林宣言将会是前进的很重要的一部分。感谢所有大家的参与的努力，祝这次的世界大会取得成功。感谢德国总理的欢迎词。现在呢，我们有一些祝贺词。联合国大会已经重申了教科文组织可持续发展教育中发挥的重要作用。我们有联合国副秘书长阿米纳·穆罕默德阁下发言。德意志联邦共和国总理默克尔博士阁下、各位阁下、女士们、先生们，我很高兴在这次重要会议上致辞。世界正在努力地战胜新冠肺炎疫情的肆虐，我们消除贫困、遏制气候变化，为人人创造机会的雄心，需要社会经济的根本性变革。这样的变革的参考依据就是2030年可持续发展议程，包括采取坚定的行动，确保必须的领导力来实现教育的变革，重新构想在哪里学、怎么学，更重要的是学什么。重新构想教育将会以可持续发展教育为核心，使青年拥有应对全球挑战和促进全球公民意识所需的知识、技能、态度和价值观。当今世界的复杂性、不确定性和不稳定都有增无减，教科文组织的教育的未来国际委员会由萨赫勒沃尔克祖德担任主席，可以帮助我们进一步理解教育可以发挥的作用。只有这样，我们才能缩小社会的分化，建立信任和宽容。各位阁下、各位部长，疫情大流行在各国、在全世界都对学校造成了严重冲击，加剧了本来就很深刻的学习危机，14亿人的学习不得不中断，很多人可能永远不会返校，尤其是女童，影响会波及好几代人。我们的应对和重建都必须要以教育为核心，政府必须利用刺激计划，收回危机期间失去的阵地。我们的重点不仅是要扩大入学， 改善学习结果，还应该是提供当今世界所需的教育类型。我们必须确保可持续发展教育包括在全世界所有教育系统中。我敦促所有会员国、政策制定者、教育工作者、青年、商界领袖和社区行动方重申你们的承诺，利用教育这一基石来变革我们的社会。
Thank you, Ms. Amina Mohammed.
谢谢 Amina Mohammed 联合国副秘书长。我们知道可持续发展还有一个重要的一个基线是这个气候变化。我们欢迎气候变化框架公约的执行秘书发言。朋友们，我很高兴的在这里发言，我很受鼓舞，看到我们今天的会议是在应对好几个重要的问题，包括气候和生物多样性的危机，确保政府保持势头，在疫情结束之后，关于教育、性别平等等等方面都保持势头。很重要的就是要帮助所有年龄的学习者都做出贡献。对教育的关注非常的关键，不仅是在本次的大会上，在我们的社区、城市和教室里面都很关键。我们比任何时候都需要关于气候变化和可持续发展的教育。气候变化是人类在地球上存活面临的最大的挑战，这一个主题不能够被忽视，尤其是在教室里面。因此呢，新的教育可持续发展教育的框架的发布非常的及时。气候变化不是可持续发展目标，不只是一个可持续发展目标，它是与其他目标相关，会影响其他目标。我们必须要确保确保教育系统能够支持所有的学习者都能够为可持续的社会和健康的环境做出贡献。我希望我们这次会议的结果能够为其他的活动做出贡献，比如说在格拉斯哥将会召开的 COP26， 我们必须要有清晰的指标来定义我们的气候行动计划，这是巴黎协定的重要的部分。这是关于气候和培训，这包括提高关于公众对于气候政策的这个认识，包括采取气候行动，儿童、青年都非常重要。这一个行动计划都要确保所有的公民都有条件、有手段去应对气候变化。这是一个终身学习，让人们有工具能够应对气候变化，用不同的方式。这样的灵活度非常重要。因为就像这次大会清晰承认的一样，气候的紧急状况不是静态的，它会继续带来不可预见的气候事件，我们必须要灵活的应对。
我们同时也必须要保证，作为政府要为新冠疫情负责的情况下，我们必须要处理性别和数字方面的差距。而很遗憾，我们看到了性别上的差距呢，在疫情期间有所增加，必须要得到处理。所以呢，教育才是至关重要的，尤其是包括可持续发展和气候变化问题的教育，我们必须要保证女性和女童不仅仅参与气变方面的对话，而且能是对话的牵头者，不管是现在还是长期。最后，我也想指出，我很赞赏和重视我们和教科文组织之间的合作伙伴关系。我们也期待着加强这个合作伙伴关系，同时加强和其他的人的合作伙伴关系。 因为不仅仅要致力让我们实现 COP26， 而且超越 COP26 之后，我们要保证可持续发展。气候变化应该是一个终身的一个过程，只有这样呢，我们才能够更加环保、更加公平、更加去打造一个更为所有人平等的世界。谢谢，谢谢 Spinos 女士发言。我也想强调一点，就是现在教科文组织和德国教育部不仅仅呢是要代表性的走这个路线图，同时他们也希望有一个具体的成果。所以呢，我们这次会议的具体成果就是德国柏林宣言。大家可能会在这个我们的网站上呢看到这个宣言，也已经多种语言呈现出来了。那大家可以读一下这个宣言，并且呢对它呢表达自己的观点和想法。这样的话，大家也可以成为会议成果的重要的贡献者之一。除了环境和全球可持续性的挑战，我们如何能向前进呢？我们今天有3个重要的主讲人将会跟我们谈及这一个问题。首先是Laurent Fabius， 他是法国宪法法院的主席，大家可能也知道呢，他是巴黎协议的一个总的设计师。那他是最好的让人选可以告诉我们到底未来的挑战是怎么样的，我们应该怎样去迎接挑战。各位好，希望大家能够听到我。首先，我想祝贺教科文组织总干事埃索莱女士和德国联邦政府共同主办了这次重要的会议。有关法国在法国的做法，那当然法国的教育部长将会跟大家呢具体的解释一下我们怎么样促进教育可持续发展这方面的工作。而我主要是作为 COP21 的主席，巴黎协定的主席发言。同时呢，我也一直以来呢都在关注着可持续发展的工作，尤其是涉及到可持续防治气候变化这方面的工作。这里我想谈3点。第一，就是刚才呢已经几位发言人都谈到了，说到呢可持续气候变化的防治，首先是从学校开始的。巴黎协定是全球的一个重要的参照性协定，在气候变化方面的一个参照性的协定，它已经强调了这一点。我们看到了巴黎协定的第12条写到，全球所有的签署方都要合作，采取一定的措施来改善教育、培训、改善宣传和公众参与，以及公众在气候变化方面信息的获取。那这里说得很清楚、很精简。那最重要的是，应该从法律方面的承诺过渡到事实。巴黎协定呢也明确地指出，教育是起到中间的作用，不仅仅是谈到的小学、中学或者是高等教育，同时各位也听到的培训啊，或者是终身教育，这些也包括在其中。我相信这里呢，最重要的是在这个教育领域，就像在其他领域一样，用来实施巴黎协定的承诺。然而，我们也同时应该呢表示一定的要诚实和客观。阿祖莱女士告诉我们呢，有最近的这份报告，呢谈得很清楚，就是未来地球前景的报告。这里说得很清楚，说到呢，我们现在在教育可持续发展方面呢，还要很多的努力要做。在所有的国家都是如此，有些国家呢还没有开始，当然他们有各种不同的原因。其他的国家呢可能已经开始这方面的工作了。那即便呢领先的国家呢，他们还是不够的。举法国的例子，有2个数字呢，大家可能会很吃惊。在最近的一份报告中显示，85%的受访人群呢不知道 温室效应气体，温室效应是什么？那当然呢，我们在预防气候变化方面呢，不一定必须要都成为温室效应的专家。但是呢，如果我们在学校没有办法让学生很好的理解这个现象，那这是很难去着手做工作的。即便在法国这样的国家，85%的受访民众不知道什么是温室效应。那另外一个例子，可能让大家比较吃惊。我们知道呢，法国很期待着用民事核能，当然依赖着民事核能，这是我们一个强项。法国的核能，民用核能呢发展的很好。一般来说，还有很多的法国人呢都赞成民用核能的发展。但是我想强调的一点，当我们去访问法国人的时候，70%的法国人认为民用核能将会产出二氧化碳，而其实我们知道呢，核能的重要的一个效应就是它不会产生二氧化碳，所以我们看到了在所有的国家中，即便是很多做出巨大努力的国家呢，我们还是离目标很远的。所以第一点，我们要强调的是，防治气候变化呢，首先是要从学校开始。第二点，教育培训和信息，那首先意味着呢，要在教师和教学方面下功夫，那剩下的都是水到渠成的。那如果没有教育，没有教师培训的话，是没有办法实现成果的。这里呢，也不仅仅是经济的原因，因为我们看到了，在有些教学的设计中呢，没有将可持续发展放在里面，或者气候变化放在里面，所以这方面呢，我们还是离目标很远。在这个方面呢，我们也想祝贺柏林宣言的各位作者，就是柏林教育可持续发展宣言的各位撰写人，因为这一宣言我也仔细的研读过了，我觉得他们写的十分精确。我想引用几条，在第6条里面，这里说的是，我们必须要保证教育促进可持续发展是我们教育体系在所有层面的关键的概念，而环境气候方面的行动将是主要的学校教育的重要的组成成分之一。当然，这里呢，我们还要做很多的努力，但是这句话呢，已经是我们很赞赏的了。另外呢，一条谈到的是应该把教育可持续发展融入在教育信息的所有的层面。从小学教育到大学教育，其中包括技术教育、职业培训教育和正式、非正式、非正规教育，这是很对的。柏林宣言呢也承认了教师的重要作用。柏林宣言同时还强调呢，为能够更好的去使用新的数字技术和绿色技术，我们应该使用这些新的技术，才能够更好的设计教育促进可持续发展。同时，我们也应该要考虑到当地的事实情况、当地的知识、土著居民的知识，这些都是很宝贵的。那在对外柏林宣言里面呢，看到了所有的签署方呢，他们都承诺要花一定的资源来保证国家层面教育促进可持续发展的资金获取。那这里呢，我们必须要头脑清醒，如果没有足够的资金的话，是不可能实现成果的。还有一点就是柏林宣言中呢，跟我们谈到了要继续跟进教育促进可持续发展方面的取得的进展。因为开会是不够的，做出承诺是不够的，我们必须要去核查，让承诺成为现实。所以这一柏林宣言呢，它是起草的是很杰出的，所有的这样教科文组织的成员国呢，都该有明确的路线图。第3点，我想说的是，2021年和未来的这10年是最重要的1年，也是最重要的10年。 为什么呢？并不是说呢，我们是在这10年年初的时候呢，都是说未来的10年很重要。但是为什么这么说呢？因为2021年，首先是我们要超越或者是战胜疫情的这一年。通过战胜疫情呢，我们对未来呢，应该采取一个新的发展的模式。那在这个新的发展模式中呢，必须要把教育和可持续发展包容进来，因为如果错失了这个机会，我们就会错过这10年。在可持续发展方面呢，我们现在真的是在跟时间赛跑。还有呢，就是比较具体的，2021年是会有重要的3个可持续发展方面的活动。第一就是格拉斯哥的大会 COP26 大会，在秋天开的大会，还有 COP15 生物多样性公约大会在昆明召开。它不是涉及到这个气候变化的，但是涉及到生物多样性的。可是这些问题呢，都是主题都是相互连接的。还有呢，就是全球自然保护联盟大会，它将会是在9月份马赛召开。那这3场大会呢，之后呢，将会有具体的承诺和具体的评估。那评价，我想再次明确地指出，在这3场重要的会议上呢，也都有一部分是专门谈到教育可持续发展的。所以，我们看到了，一方面呢，大会涉及到的气变或者是生物多样性。另外一方面呢，他们也有教育可持续发展的内容在里面，所以所有的这些内容其实都应该是综合在一起的，以便让我们2021年呢成为一个关键的一年。最后，我想引用一下 Leon Bloom 在1946年教科文组织创立的大会上呢，他谈到的了教育应该是促进和平的。那它应该是在我们工作的中心。今天我们其实可以说呢，教育是应该促进和平和可持续发展，它应该是在我们行动的中心。好，谢谢，希望祝大家会议顺利。
Thank you, Mr. Fabius, for that impassioned
谢谢法比乌斯先生呢，充满激情的跟我们讨论了相关采取的行动。大家可能知道，下一个发言人是 Alexander Guest， 他是世界知名的欧宇航局的一个宇航员。那他也是积极的去宣传可持续性。他将跟大家谈一谈可持续性，谈一下呢，我们在打造可持续未来上有什么样的希望和挑战。
Dear participants of the UNESCO World
各位
Conference,
教科文组织世界大会的与会
people
者，
have compared the
人们一
significance
直以来
of Yuri
都
Gagarin's
把
flight with the first fish leaving the ocean
我们的
eons
宇航
ago
系统
to
呢
mark
和
fundamental
几万年
moment
前
in
生活
history,
在地球上的
not only
第
in
一
human
只
history,
鱼
but
进行比
in
较
the，history
不仅
of
仅
earthly
是
life. To be
这个历
remembered
这
in
是不仅仅是
tens
人类
of
历史，
thousands
同
of
时也
years
是在地球上
if
有生物的历
humankind
史。
decides to
那我们
still
看到
exist
了
by then.
不知道
This
在成
curiosity of
几十万年
life
前呢，
to
人
explore
不
new
在还没有出现的时候是什么样的。我们都不但在致力于探
We
索
discovered every continent on
当
this
时的情
planet
况，
by
我
we
们
started to live and do science in
开
the
始呢
hostile
去
environment of Antarctica.
探索在各个不同的洲，比如说在南极洲极端情况下是怎么样生活的。那我们每一次的这个探索呢，都开启了下一步的探索。之后我们知道人们现在呢也在有很好的一个计划，那不断的在太空去探索我们的星球。那也看一下，我们还有更多的未知要探索，比如说呢，月球和火星。那我们在不断的去收集重要的未来的数据知识，来改善我们的生活。我们也给年轻一代呢提供了很多的灵感。我们也在共同的和各国合作。各大洲之间进行合作，那太空艰难的环境呢，让我们不得不以可持续的方式去进行生活和工作。那所以呢，比如说在月球上的生活，让我们理解了如何去更好的保护地球。也许呢，在火星上探索的时候，我们会发现呢，我们可能还有兄弟姐妹在那。那也许呢，我们觉得最重要的是让我们会给地球一定的回馈，这一点呢是比任何东西都要宝贵的。当我第一次登上太空的时候，这是2014年的时候，那500多个鱼，他们来，所谓的鱼呢，他就离开了这个地方。那之后呢，他们不久的就都死亡了。我们理解了这种太空空间的生活的极端条件。那我在第一次踏上太空之后呢，我想看看我们从外空看一下我们的海洋是什么样的情况。当然呢，我们没有这个太多的期待，因为呢，我是一个地理科学家呢，我之前已经看到很多的太空的照片，但是我看到的是。还是让我很吃惊。大家可以考虑一下你自己在这个航空器里。当时呢，如果你们首先看到的是外空的一片漆黑，这是没有办法去想象的。那比你地下室的黑暗呢还要黑。那我们也看到呢。在你太空船上呢，这个生命支持系统呢是至关重要的。然后呢，当太空船转移了一下，你在这个窗子上突然就看到了地球，那这时候你是很吃惊的。那我也希望能够看到的是大的地球，觉得自己是很这个无限的。
这就像。在我年轻的时候，我在院子里玩耍，然后呢，看到远处的山顶，那个时候我就想，海里的鱼儿、大洋里的鱼儿，他们能够感到会发生什么事件吗？所以呢，这一切都是等于。未来呢都是虚无的，大家是看不见、摸不着的。星球那么大，宇宙那么大，我在宇宙飞船的舷窗上看到啊，就是一望无际的这个宇宙，而在这个一望无际的宇宙中呢。在我们的地球周围是黑乎乎的一团，所以啊，如果要是没有水源的话，没有水的话，那一切呢就结束了。我们的江河湖泊呀，同时呢，我们也看到在地球的周围呢是。一层雾，我们呢听不到 他们发出的声音，但是呢，我们可以知道，正是这一切支撑着我们每天的这个生活和地球上的生命。所以我看到的这些，在你们很多人看起来呢，可能都是不可想象的，因为在远离地球40万公里的地方，确实是地球呢就变得非常的渺小，而地球上的每一个人呢变得就更小了。这一个距离对我来说呢，似乎是我是从一个窗户，然后从地球呢走到了这个星球中。因此呢，我们的这个环境呢，我们可以看到这个环境呢，对于我们人类来说，它并不是非常友好的。我想所有的经历过这个宇航过程的人啊，都会和我有同样的看法。我们飞向宇宙，我们会想象呢，宇宙的环境是非常神奇的。但是当我们回到地球，回到我们的这个环境，我们才知道，尽管宇宙对我们有很大的吸引力，但是我们每天生活的地方还是地球。这就是我们从舷窗上看到的地球。这似乎呢，让我们想象到人类起源的时候，地球起源的时候的那一条小鱼。所以啊，我们可以从中呢体会到保护环境是多么的重要。我想所有的宇航员都能够有同样的感受。他们呢是通过我们这些人呢，是通过国际宇航局进行合作，而我们在合作的过程中都看到了地球周围的这个黑乎乎的这一个保护层。所以我们就更加决心呢，要为保护我们赖以生存的这个地球，因为我们没有替代的这个做法。如果我们再不采取行动，不对地球加以保护的话，那就是我们的末日。因为地球只有一个，没有第二个。所以呢，我现在呢想到的就是那条鱼呢，它应该重新回到地球的大江里。
Thank you, Mr. Guest, for those
谢谢
inspiring words and also
Ghost
images
先
that
生
you shared with us. Now, we cannot lose sight of what
谢
all of
谢
this
Ghost 先生给我们展现的这些画面。
is so critical, and that is for our youth.
我们都会想到，为什么对于年轻人来说，教育和可持续发展的教育是如此重要。我们下回呢，请这个印度尼西亚的一个小姑娘来给我们说两句。各位好，我自我介绍一下，我来自印度尼西亚，我今年16岁了。在学校，我知道了地球是我们生存的地方，我们可以呢为保护环境来进行这个努力。但是后来我也知道，光是书本上学习这些呢是没有很大作用的，我们必须要实际采取行动才行。我的国家，在我的国家中，我看到呢有很多的地方经常受到洪水的侵犯，还有一些地方就成为了露天的垃圾场。原来呢非常漂亮的地方，现在变成了这个垃圾堆满的地方。所有这些呢应该结束了这种做法。我们不能够继续 看到这些行动呢而无视一睹。所有的一切都应该从行动开始。我们可以看到，现在由于人们的行为给地球带来的影响，我们应该要从现在开始一代一代的为保护地球而努力。我们从现在开始就应该要改变我们的生活方式，而这个教育呢，就应该能够帮助我们改变生活方式，怎么样来改变气候变化。当然，总是被动的应对气候变化是没有用的，我们还应该要知道不仔细的保护地球，实际上呢，就是在不断的毁灭我们这些儿童和我们的后代赖以生存的地方。去年，我的一些朋友参与了一个国际计划，这个计划呢是和国际的其他的大学生一起来进行的。我希望经过我们的努力，这个行动呢可以吸引越来越多的人。我们要改变，而且呢，还有在世界上很多国家的公民也都希望这种改变。而去年呢，上个星期，我们呢也我有一个朋友是来自葡萄牙的，他说到，声音非常不好，很抱歉。这个地球呢是脆弱的，应该保护。其他的人说，由于现在我们有了新的知识，我们可以找到更多的应对气候变化的方法。来自英国的一个朋友说，我们必须从现在开始采取行动，因为如果我们不现在开始行动的话，那我们的地球呢就会变得越来越危险，对于地球上的动物和我们本身来说都会变得越来越危险。所以我们这些学生也应该从现在开始行动。来自尼日利亚的一个中学生也说，要保护我们的地球。来自墨西哥的 Jenna Sun 他说，必须要为地球的生存而采取行动，因为地球是我们的房子，我们不能看着它被烧毁，我们必须要保护它。所以呢，这一切都需要进行教育，这种教育是终身的教育，以便能够让我们呢继续幸福的生活在地球上。
Let's start from ourselves, then start to spread to the others.
那我们呢就要从自身开始，然后呢再吸引其他人，说服其他人去改变生活方式。当然这是不容易的，但是我想我们一点一点的做去，最后一定能够达到目的。
Every person's education, everywhere around the world.
在世界各个地方，所有的人都应该接受这样的教育。在我的国家，有很多年轻人呢，展开了一个保护环境的行动，而教育部门应该给他们提供支持。我们如果不行动的话，那什么人能够行动呢？所以我们一定要改变现在的生活方式。要知道，为保护地球，每一个人都应该发挥作用，这样呢，才能够使地球变得更加美好，也使我们的生活变得更加美好。所以，我们作为学生，应该积极参与这个行动。谢谢。
aprendemos nuevos y sencillos métodos para ser ecológicamente responsables y hacer nuestro planeta un lugar un poquito mejor.
Composting is the process of taking waste material and reusing it to make something new.
How many of you know in 2050 we need 3 planets like Earth?
By asking the girls in the school to bring their uniforms in good conditions that no longer fit well to them. Next, we clean, fix, and sell them.
In addition, the funds collected will be for our campaign data.
Todos sabemos que o planeta Terra tem-nos pedido ajuda, mas será que estamos a fazer o suficiente? Quanto mais teremos para tomar medidas e salvar o planeta?
And thank you, Ms. Warodana, for sharing those perspectives and those very important initiatives. Now, I wanted to tell you about another opportunity to participate with us in this conference. You might know that on Earth Day, UNESCO launched a global campaign.
你们知道啊，我们还有其他的各种手段让大家参加这次会议。我们教科文组织呢有一个项目，就是学会保护地球。通过这个活动呢，可以大家可以知道采取什么样的这个行动，日常生活中可以呢保护地球。你们可以上这个柏林的有关的网站。然后呢，就可以为这个保护地球而学习这个项目呢做出贡献。下面呢，我们暂时的休会，然后呢，再重新回到第一场全会上。谢谢大家。
Welcome back to our UNESCO World Conference on Education for Sustainable Development. And we will dive right now into our first key session, our plenary session on major sustainability challenges amid a planetary crisis, amid a pandemic as well. And I'm very happy to bring in now Ms. Stefania Giannini. She is the Assistant Director General for Education at UNESCO, and she will say a few words to get this session started. Ms. Giannini, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sumi, and Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the first session of the 2021 World Conference on Education for Sustainable Development. This conference had to be delayed for a year by the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. And thanks to the commitment and excellent collaboration of our German hosts, we are able to hold it, albeit online, and that's great. Well, the pandemic hit as we exited the hottest decade on record. The climate crisis is no longer the threat of a distant future, but a global reality. The Director General and today's other opening speakers have already evoked the environmental disasters that we are witnessing daily. Our planet is fragile and endangered. For too long, we have taken for granted that humans can disrupt nature without paying any price. And we pay, we know, a very high price. We now stand on the precipice of multiple crises caused by our own behavior. To change course, and it's possible to change course, of course, transformative education is the only choice. Education as one of the most powerful forces we have for changing the behaviors of future generations. Education for Sustainable Development, or ESD, as we say, reimagines education to empower learners of all ages with the knowledge, values, and initiative to act for environmental integrity, economic viability, and a more just society. Well, the United Nations General Assembly included Target 4.7 within Education Goal 4 of Sustainable Development Goals to acknowledge that education must not only be universally accessible, which is important, of course, but also meaningful and empowering. And this is significant. With the adoption of the new global framework on education for sustainable development, ESD for 2030, UNESCO member states collectively acknowledge that ESD is enabled to achieve the 17 global goals and to transform society, definitely. Much progress has been made over the past 15 years, from countries adopting ESD policies and integrating ESD in curricula to supporting whole school approaches to sustainability. On top of the nearly 40 million learners and million teachers reached through the Global Action Plan, our close to 100 GAP partner organizations supported over 3 million youth leaders, established 5,000.5 ESD activities by local authorities, and supported over 1,000.5 strategic policy documents at global, regional, and local levels. Now, we need to upskill our ambition. We need to upskill the success and mainstream ESD so that all learners can be active agents in the survival of our planet and be game changers. ESD for 2030 is a blueprint for governments, education stakeholders, civil society, and learners of all ages to reorient the goals of learning of this purpose of societal transformation. Transformation is vital to address climate change, mass loss of biodiversity, extreme inequality, the threat of future pandemics as well. This starts with transformative learning, which empowers people to transform themselves and to take action to transform the world. Our aim today is that by 2030, we will live in a world where governments have made sustainability and climate action core curriculum components at every level of education. Learners from all walks of life understand sustainability challenges, have the passion to work together to overcome them, and the ability to act for the benefit of people and the planet. Teacher training programs across the world empower educators and teachers as agents of change for social transformations. Young people in every country are provided with the skills that help them make their voices heard to shape policies about the future of the planet. And last but not least, every city and community across the world provides opportunities for everyone to learn to live sustainably in their daily lives. Well, the ESD for 2030 roadmap, as I have here, you can see, I hope, the green paper, of course, calls upon member states to take decisive leadership to mobilize stakeholders in these 5 key action areas and support their collaboration under coordinated country initiative. The aim is integrating ESD in learning at every level in every country in the world. It's an ambitious project, but we can get it together. Cross-sectoral collaboration is, of course, key. The education sector cannot advance alone, but must forge strong links with the environment sector, of course, and all other sectors that have an impact on sustainable development. In terms of government policy, this means collaboration also with finance, development cooperation, health, social services, transportations, and many others. So to say, is an holistic approach to ESD and through ESD. While UNESCO will support these multi-stakeholder country initiatives, as well as continue to enable networking of global partners through platforms and meetings. And this is about sharing good practice and being a kind of laboratory of ideas, which is our mission, our mandate. At the end of this 3-day event, you will be invited all to commit to this vision through the Berlin Declaration on Education for Sustainable Development. It's a plan of action to integrate ESD as a fundamental element, foundational element of learning at all levels, so 100% of the world's population can learn for people and the planet. The declaration, of course, will need to be implemented through global, regional, national, and local processes. It's a long process looking ahead to important milestones, such as the 2021 United Nations Biodiversity Conference, COP15, and the 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP26, and beyond. Well, to conclude, transformative education is a necessity to meet the multiple crises we face today, preparing us for others we may face in the future and bridge the rift with nature to stop potential crises before they can occur. For our survival and the future of our future generation, we must learn for our planet and act for sustainability. We have no time to lose. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Giannini, for sharing that valuable input, particularly sharing UNESCO's perspective on this 2030 roadmap. And we have the opportunity now to drill down a little bit deeper into this topic of major sustainability challenges and how the roadmap can help. And we have 2 key panel sessions, the first led by Ms. Giannini, so I will hand the screen back over to you.
Thank you, Sumi, very much. And it's my great pleasure now to introduce 5 distinguished panelists, preceded by an input statement by recorded video from Royal Highness Princess Lala Hasna of Morocco, President of the Mohammed VI Foundation for Environmental Protection. My distinguished panelists.
الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على مولانا رسول الله وآله وصحبه. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in the very special context we live in today, it's up to us to build together a new indispensable consensus by defining the priorities we set for ourselves as global citizens bound by a common destiny. The COVID-19 crisis reminds us of the urgent need to achieve global, equitable, sustainable development that serves everyone. The protection of the environment and preservation of our planet, our common home, are fundamental elements to this approach. This is the lofty mission that the Mohammed VI Foundation for Environmental Protection, which I'm honored to chair, is resolutely carrying out. For more than 2 decades, our foundation has been working to develop various programs aimed at reducing or eliminating the negative impact of man on nature. My brother, His Majesty King Mohammed VI, whose focus on environmental protection goes back to his youth, has always encouraged the pursuit of the most ambitious approaches, making sure they are embedded in the present, yet resolutely turned towards the future. In this regard, His Majesty always reminds us that the school is at the very heart of these development issues and the environmental challenge in particular. School is a place for education and the teaching of values. Educating young people to respect the environment means believing in the promise of a new, more harmonious and sustainable world. Education for sustainable development, the theme bringing us together, is the key to success. For this reason, our foundation focuses on raising awareness and training young people on these issues. We believe in sowing the seeds of environmental awareness, which contributes to the emergence of a society that is aware of the natural environment and capable of adopting appropriate eco-friendly behavior. We are proud to partner once again with UNESCO. We've been working together since 2020 to mainstream environmental education into school curricula at all levels. In this regard, Morocco is one of 3 countries in the world conducting a pilot for the UNESCO Global Schools program. Mobilization for environmental issues can only have a lasting effect if it becomes a natural part of initial training. Environmental education from an early age is therefore an essential priority. A generation separates us from the Rio Summit. It is imperative to examine the reasons that may have slowed the advancement of ESD in school curricula. Let's act and immediately implement this important measure. Let's make a firm commitment during this decade to establish education for sustainable development as an absolute priority. This is urgent. This is vital. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much to Her Royal Highness Princess Lala Asna of Morocco for this input statement from a leading voice on ESD in the Arab region and in Africa. And let me now introduce my distinguished panelists, 5 ministers of education from all regions, all of whom are joining us live. Thank you very much for taking the time. We appreciate it very much. Our host, of course, Ms. Anja Karliczek, Federal Minister of Education and Research, Germany. Mr. Koichi Aguda, Minister of Culture, Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology of Japan. Ms. Sara Ruto, Chief Administrative Secretary, in the Ministry of Education of Kenya. Ms. Marie Levin, Minister of Education, Science and Culture, Suriname. And Mr. Hussein bin Ibrahim Al Hamadi, Minister of Education of the United Arab Emirates. Well, I would like to invite all of you to respond briefly for 3 minutes each, and please keep the time, if possible, to the question. What are the main 2-3 sustainable development challenges your country is facing, and how can they be addressed by ESD? I'm first calling upon our host, Minister Karliczek. Please.
Ja, liebe Frau Giannini, liebe Teilnehmer dieser Runde. Deutschland hat eine ganz besondere Aufgabe, weil wir zum einen innerhalb der Europäischen Union das bevölkerungsreichste Land sind und auf der anderen Seite sind wir ein hochentwickeltes Industrieland, was auch einen Großteil seiner Wertschöpfung und Wohlstand daraus zieht, dass wir eben eine sehr leistungsfähige Industrie haben. Und diese Industrie verbraucht natürlich schon, ich sag mal doch, viele Ressourcen, die wir jetzt in den nächsten Jahren ersetzen müssen. Und deswegen ist für uns eben das Thema Nachhaltigkeit eine ganz besondere Herausforderung. Aber wir sehen eben, wie vernetzt wir mit der Welt sind. Die Corona-Pandemie hat es uns sehr deutlich vor Augen geführt. Der Klimawandel ist auch in Deutschland und in Europa seit mehreren Jahren sehr spürbar. Wir haben viele trockene Sommer gehabt, die auch gerade der Bevölkerung, die sich vielleicht noch nicht damit beschäftigt hat in den vergangenen Jahren, sehr deutlich gemacht hat, was es bedeutet, wenn wir jetzt nicht wirklich unser Herz in die Hand nehmen und dafür sorgen, dass eben Nachhaltigkeit auf allen Ebenen jetzt wirklich auch umgesetzt wird. Und deswegen brauchen wir auch gemeinsame Lösungen. Und deswegen freut es mich, dass wir heute in dieser Runde uns eben auch mit Bildung für nachhaltige Entwicklung beschäftigen, weil natürlich kann das nicht einer alleine. Wir brauchen eine ganze Gesellschaft dafür. Wir haben eine nationale Nachhaltigkeitsstrategie entwickelt, die Politik als der Regulierungsrahmen, Wirtschaft als diejenigen, die unsere Wertschöpfung generieren müssen und in Zusammenarbeit mit der Gesellschaft eben alle drei Teile, die das nur gemeinsam leisten können, zusammenbringen soll, nämlich nachhaltiger, resilienter und an dieser Stelle auch immer als offene und auch gerechte Gesellschaft miteinander an den Nachhaltigkeitszielen zu arbeiten. Und wir glauben einfach, dass ein ganz wesentlicher Schlüssel auf dem Weg zu einer nachhaltigen Gesellschaft die Frage einer Bildung ist, die genau diesen Aspekt immer im Fokus hat. Und deswegen ist aus unserer Sicht Bildung für nachhaltige Entwicklung ein ganz wichtiger Schlüssel, eben im Sinne auch des UNESCO-Weltprogramms. Vor 6 Jahren haben wir unter der Führung meines Hauses den Prozess gestartet und sind heute weltweiter Vorreiter auch beim Thema Bildung für nachhaltige Entwicklung. Es gibt bei uns eine nationale Plattform für Bildung für nachhaltige Entwicklung, die eben 40 hochrangige Mitglieder aus Politik, Wissenschaft, Wirtschaft und Gesellschaft vereint. Wir haben ein großes gemeinsames Ziel, nämlich die Bildung für nachhaltige Entwicklung im deutschen Bildungssystem überall zu verankern. Und wir haben einen nationalen Aktionsplan für Bildung für nachhaltige Entwicklung, in dem 130 Ziele festgeschrieben sind. Und aus diesen Zielen sind dann 349 Empfehlungen erarbeitet worden, wie man Nachhaltigkeit implementieren kann. Da gehört zum Beispiel Nachhaltigkeit in die nationalen Lehrpläne zu bringen, in die Curricula und in die Ausbildungsordnungen, was wir übrigens im beruflichen Bereich in dieser Legislaturperiode schon getan haben. Dann eben die Entwicklung von Aus- und Fort- und Weiterbildung, gerade auch für die, die unsere Kinder lehren, nochmal in den Fokus zu stellen und eben auch Modellversuche, also praktische Anwendungsbereiche zu finden, gerade auch im Bereich der beruflichen Bildung. Wichtig ist uns auch, informelles Lernen zu unterstützen, zum Beispiel in Museen oder auch in Parks und Vereinen. Und ein ganz wesentlicher Aspekt in meinem Haus, ich mache ja nicht nur Bildung, ich darf auch Forschung machen. Und Forschung ist ein ganz wichtiger Aspekt, Forschung für nachhaltige Entwicklung auch in der Wissenschaft, die Nachhaltigkeit immer wieder in den Fokus zu stellen und alle Perspektiven, die wir dort haben, wie wir Nachhaltigkeit eben auch technologisch voranbringen können, immer wieder auszuloten und immer auch wieder mit finanziellen Mitteln zu unterstützen, dass wir schneller vorankommen. Wichtig ist uns aber auch die Implementierung in der Fläche. Wir wollen eben auch Beratung von Kommunen unterstützen, wie sie auch ihre eigenen Abläufe, ihre eigenen Prozesse unter dem Gesichtspunkt Bildung für nachhaltige Entwicklung beschleunigen können, zum Beispiel indem wir Kompetenzzentren in die Kommunen hineinbringen. Ein ganz wesentlicher Punkt, und das freut mich sehr, dass das in den letzten Jahren sich sehr verstärkt hat, ist die Beteiligung junger Generationen. Weil wofür machen wir das? Wir machen das für die jungen Generationen, die noch lange auf dieser Welt leben sollen und dürfen. Wir haben in unserem Land eine sehr starke Fridays for Future Community, die ein großes Engagement auch für Nachhaltigkeit zeigt. Und wir haben ein Jugendforum für die Bildung für nachhaltige Entwicklung, das sogenannte UPAN-Forum, wo sich 30 junge Leute im Alter von 16 bis 25 Jahren engagieren. Da geht es auch sehr darum, dass man viele Fragen nur im Team, nur im Miteinander lösen kann und dass genau das uns stärker macht, wenn wir miteinander die Dinge entwickeln. Wir brauchen, ich glaube, das ist in dieser Runde unstrittig, mehr Engagement, um unseren Planeten zu retten, um einen lebenswerten Planeten zu retten. Und deswegen fördern wir die SDG Generation, so nennen wir sie, denn die haben von Anfang an gelernt, diese Fragen in den Mittelpunkt zu stellen. Die kennen ja nichts anderes, als dass Klimawandel für sie eine wichtige Aufgabe ist.
Dankeschön. Thank you very much, Minister Karliczek. And let me now turn this first round to Minister Aguda from Japan, a long-standing supporter of UNESCO ESD program. Minister Aguda, the floor is yours. Please.
Hi. Thank you very much. I am Hagiura Koichi, the Minister of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology of Japan. First of all, I'm very much pleased that this memorable conference is held today to kick off new international framework of ESD for 2030. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to discuss. Japan has been actively working on ESD since 2005. As an outcome, Japanese initiatives have come to develop following three specific features. First is that the philosophy of ESD is officially incorporated in the national curriculum standards. Second, ESD is practiced not only under the jurisdiction of Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology, or MEXT, but through collaboration amongst relevant ministry and agencies according to the plan of the whole government. Thirdly, schools and communities are working together to lead ESD to resolving specific local issues. Today, Japan faces multiple challenges. One of the biggest is the declining birth rate and aging population in rural areas. Challenges in providing care to elderlies and issues of regional revitalization associated with declining birth rate and aging population are perfect subjects for putting ESD into practice. Schools and municipal governments can cooperate. Practical ESD activities, such as providing spaces for elderlies or holding events to enliven communities, can be carried out. Next is about natural disaster prevention and responses. Throughout its history, Japan has met by large numbers of earthquakes, torrential rains, and other disasters. The country has developed overcoming those challenges. Applying lessons learned from the past disasters to preparing for and responding to future disasters actually is an integral part of building sustainable society. In Japan, we practice disaster prevention education based on ESD methodologies. For example, with the help from local communities, universities, NPO, and others, children create local disaster prevention maps, join drills for the operation of evacuation centers, and take part in reconstruction and community building initiatives. Lastly, on the changes of society due to COVID-19. As the global pandemic is changing the society, inclusive of how people learn in a big way, we need human resources driving social transformation toward a new normal. ESD is the very education which equips learners with capabilities to respond to the unknown and abilities to transform society. Corona is making the roles of ESD all the more important, and further initiatives are needed in each country. With that understanding, Japan is determined to continue working on the global promotion of ESD through contribution to the Japanese funds in trust. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Secretary Rutte now, let me ask you about the three main sustainability challenges Kenya is facing and how ESD can respond to them. Please, you have the floor, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I hope you can hear me very well. Greetings from Nairobi. Kenya is keen in its leadership for education for sustainable development within the borders, in the region, across East Africa, and of course, globally. And this is because of our realization that while we must fulfill the needs and aspiration of the current generation, we must also protect the environment and guarantee the ability of future generations to meet their needs. And we have therefore seen the 2 to 3 challenges. There are many, but I'll just highlight the 2 to 3, which have been alluded to by some of the other speakers, The first one is climate change. In the recent past, the country has experienced extreme and unpredictable weather, which scientists attribute to global warming. And this has had a detrimental effect on agricultural output, which in turn has had major knock-on effects on the overall economy, as agriculture constitutes a significant 25% of our economy. As a result, environmental matters have been brought to the forefront of public discourse. It is affecting everybody, it is in everybody's kitchen, and so it is important that even publicly, we are now talking about this. And education for sustainable development will help promote good practices that address climate change, including integration of greening in all the sectors. The second major challenge that we are witnessing is waste management related issues. And waste management offers a good opportunity to decouple economic growth from environmental degradation by transitioning to green economy that promotes the well-being of the people and the planet. It is estimated that Kenya generates about 22,000 tons of waste per day, which translates to 8 million tons annually. And it is estimated that 40% of this waste is generated in urban centers. Given our 10% increase in urbanization, which is expected by 2030, there is need to promote a strategic approach to this challenge. And ESD, which promotes policies and facilitates knowledge and development of skills, is going to be helpful in this matter. And the third challenge that I'd like to point out is preservation of our natural resources. Kenya is endowed with vast and diverse natural resources, including biodiversity, land, unique ecosystems, from our sea to the highlands to the mountains. So we are very well endowed. And Kenya's economy is founded on this natural resource base. Our constitution, the Kenyan constitution, imposes an obligation to every person to cooperate with state organs and other persons to promote and conserve the environment and ensure ecologically sustainable development and use of natural resources. It is, however, recognized that preservation of these resources remains a challenge due to inadequate use of innovative approaches such as recycling and reuse. And we see ESD providing an opportunity to allow this change of attitude. Therefore, in terms of how Kenya plans to implement ESD in our 2030 roadmap, I'd like to start by pointing out that we do have our Vision 2030, which is very much in sync with Education for Sustainable Development, because it provides for the attainment of a nation living in a clean, secure, and sustainable environment. This is our Vision 2030. It's therefore driven by the principles we are talking about right now. So the three initiatives that I'd like to point out, which are going on and which will ensure that we not only have policy, but we also have practice that promotes education for sustainable development. The first one is the multi-agency approach that we have, where we are talking about enhancing coordination of actors in education for sustainable development. This demands strategic collaboration and networking among all actors, including the various government ministries and agencies, the academia, members of the civil society, the private sector, and communities. Key milestones towards a coordinated approach to ESD have been made through the establishment of regional centers of excellence in universities and other tertiary institutions, as well as targeted programs in school. There's been synergy amongst the actors, but a lot more could be done. So going forward, the ministry is focused on operationalizing a coordination framework with the Ministry of Environment, National Environmental Management Agency, known as NEMA, and other actors in education for sustainable development. And the intention is to harmonize all efforts, because when we work together, then the impact will be greater. The second thing which I'd like to point out, which is really helping in a perspective towards ESD and ensuring the practice, is the curriculum reforms that that are ongoing now, which have led to mainstreaming of ESD content in the curriculum. And the curriculum reforms are very exciting because they are about the future. Right from pre-primary, if we go to our curriculum, we have environmental activities about children understanding the value and growing up in the value of the environment. Very exciting activities are where they involve parents. And you have a parent, a home activity a child is given is that together with your parent or with your guardian, walk around the community, the environment, talk about what you are seeing, observe the sky. So these are very important. And I think as long as we do this, we will continue to have a generation of tomorrow that loves the environment and therefore will protect it. So that is very important. We have also previous clubs, practices like young farmers clubs that have gone, that are in our schools even up to today. Peace and global citizenship, we call them Amani clubs, environmental clubs. So both through the formal and informal curriculum, you provide an opportunity to ensure that the children will save themselves, even if the adults, we may be failing them. So this mainstreaming of the curriculum is very important. And the last opportunity and initiative that I'd like to point out is that of sharing. Having a knowledge for sharing and learning, whether it is through the digital platforms, and digital education is a very key competence that is part of the curriculum, because we know that through sharing, through peer learning, through collaboration, you create opportunities for nurturing the skills and attitudes that are important for saving the planet and, of course, the people.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Secretary Ruto. I suppose you anticipated already the way forward for ESD. That's fine. I mean, we are agile, no issue. Just a bit of the second round, so this allows you to be very, very short in the last. But thank you very much for sharing us. I'm giving now the floor to Minister Marie Levin from Suriname, and recommend to take the time, please. We are almost on time.
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone, and warm greetings from Suriname. I would like to first thank the UNESCO leadership for the invitation to address all of you today. Suriname is a small Latin American, and the Latin American countries also face considerably challenges in sustainable development, and especially now under the COVID-19 pandemic. Suriname is a very small tropical country situated slightly north of the equator above Brazil. It is the #1 place in the world with the most green forest area. Our natural resources play a dominant role in the economy, its exports, employment, and government revenues. And one of our major challenges has been an economy that is highly dependent on natural resources. That's a challenge. But we have to diversify and manage our natural resources, not only for today's consumption, but for sustainable economic and social growth in the future. Another challenge that can no longer be denied is the increase of poverty and inequalities in our population in the last years. People in remote areas of the country have become vastly vulnerable and excluded of opportunity. Isolation and inequalities have become a racing barrier to build bricks of development in the whole country. Given these challenges, education for sustainable development in my country and in Latin American region, education is the great equalizer. It lifts people out of poverty, but many young people leave the school system in our region because education here has lost its purpose. Our youngsters really ask sometimes, education for what? Why should I go to school and engage with my teacher if the bubble of my classroom does not reflect the world outside? Why should I go to school if the people that makes the most money are the extractors of gold and bauxite and timber, and most of them did not even get education? That's a big challenge. The perspective that UNESCO brings with ESD looks for the real answers our young people are searching for today. How do we build a world more inclusive, just, peaceful, and sustainable? ESD empowers our students and lifts them from consumers to creators, educates based on the real challenges and problems a community faces, and giving young people a role, a responsibility, a voice, and tools to become change makers, thinkers, and strategists. They will contribute in transforming our countries from being dependent on extractive economies to more sustainable, ecological, and renewable economies. And we have to trust our teachers here and the potential of the real capabilities of young people. I guess you just want to speak about the challenges and not about the roadmap, the big transformation. So we are only talking about question 1, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yes, okay.
Thank you, Thank you very much.
Keep it like here. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So, and now still on question 1, I'm calling upon Mr. Al-Hamadi from the UAE for his perspective on the challenges, sustainability challenges. Please, the floor is yours as the last speaker of this first round.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here with you today, and really would like to extend my thanks and appreciation to the UNESCO and to our counterpart in Germany for hosting this great event. We really have to think seriously going forward about the SDG implementation. In the UAE, as you are aware, we have challenges. The main challenges in UAE is the environment. You know, the environment and the water scarcity in the UAE. We have done a lot of projects and a lot of research in that area to how we can harvest more fresh water and how can be efficient in desalination in a plant. And that has have a good fruit on us, and we are continuing in that area. The other aspect, UAE is a younger generation. So with this technology and new generation kids that really they like to engage into digital platforms, so becoming engaged into different lifestyle, we need to bring them back to be active and sportive and good fitness. And we created a lot of programs to overcome this challenge. As you are aware, UAE is in the past used to mainly focus on natural resources, and UAE has evolved and changed plan to rely on different type of industries, and there is a lot of manufacturing and tourism industry is growing in the UAE, and we are becoming a hub for tourism. And we are also working in other aspects is to create a knowledge-based economy for the future. And for that, we have done a lot of transformation in the education system from early childhood to general education to higher education and to research and R&D. But frankly speaking, with the COVID-19, when it hit, it had impacted the whole globe. I'm sure everybody has suffered and has brought a lot of nations years or 1 year or more than that back and impacted education. In UAE, we are blessed that we had very advanced infrastructure. Previously, we have invested big time in the information technology. We were able to shift smoothly to a digital platform, and no kid was left behind without education. But what happened to the world will impact us. We are like a big village, we are all connected. And we would like to see the implementation of the new plan for SDGs for 20 to 30. And we have revised our policy. We have created a ministerial committee from 2017 to work on achieving all the 17 SDG. But honestly, education is the heart of all the initiative. And I would like really to thank again the UNESCO, because we have to update and change and enhance our plans all the time. And with this new release, I think it's easy to read it, but it's very challenging, I think, for the whole world to understand it, to put a plan, and the implementation. The implementation, I think the world must come together and cooperate in the implementation, because some nations, they are blessed, they have very good income, they can do it, but other nations, they are behind. But for us to succeed globally and save our environment, we have to work as one and support each other and work as a one team to have fruitful, sustainable future together. And we can hand over this earth from generation to generation. And I really am very happy to see that all other countries, they are working, but I would like to see more cooperation and one unity toward these goals and sharing knowledge and know-how and expertise between Ministry of Education. I think it's a must. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank all of you for these very insightful reflections. I think you already included in the first round, not only mentioning the challenges, but many of you already explained clearly solutions and approach. So I propose you can have a second round with a very, very short statement, focusing a bit more on the way forward for ESD. Thank you very much. And we try to stay on time, actually. Starting from Minister Karliček, of course. Please, the floor is yours.
But short is the biggest challenge, I think. Okay. Also Nachhaltigkeit ist ja ein globales Ziel. Und wenn wir das Ziel erreichen wollen, dann ist Bildung ein ganz, ganz wesentlicher Schlüssel. Und deswegen haben wir im Rahmen der deutschen Ratspräsidentschaft im letzten halben Jahr den Aufruf gestartet, dass wir als gemeinsamen Beitrag von den EU-Mitgliedstaaten etwas zu dieser Konferenz beitragen wollen. Und deswegen freue ich mich auch sehr, dass wir heute mit 17 anderen EU-Mitgliedstaaten, mit 17 Kolleginnen und Kollegen heute ein Commitment zu BNE abgeben können, was eben wichtige Maßnahmen für ESD 2030 dann in unseren Ländern realisieren soll. Das Thema wird jetzt innerhalb der Europäischen Union aufgegriffen. Und wir in Deutschland haben wir ja mit unserem nationalen Aktionsplan, von dem ich eben berichtet habe, schon einiges auf den Weg gebracht, sodass das Upgrade im Rahmen der UNESCO Roadmap für uns eben ein wichtiger Fortschritt ist. Wir haben unsere partizipative Länderinitiative im Sinne des neuen UNESCO-Programms bereits ausgeweitet und haben unsere Aktivitäten auch in einigen Handlungsfeldern ausgeweitet. Wir setzen jetzt den Schwerpunkt auf die Verwirklichung der SDGs und eben auch, wir widmen uns auch der Frage möglicher Zielkonflikte, die in den SDGs entstehen und wie wir damit dann eben umgehen können, um wirklich zum Beispiel auch nachhaltigen Konsum fördern zu können. Wir wollen ein Bewusstsein schaffen, dass jeder eben einen Beitrag dazu leisten kann, im Sinne von transformativem Handeln. Auch unser eigenes Handeln immer wieder in Frage zu stellen, ist ein wichtiger Punkt. Und konkret heißt das für uns, dass wir von der frühkindlichen Bildung an über Schulbildung, über die berufliche Bildung, aber eben auch in außerschulischen und informellen Bildungsinstrumenten dazu beitragen wollen, dass dieses Gedankengut einfach verankert wird. Und da ist, glaube ich, die Ausgangsposition hier in Deutschland, weil wir seit vielen Jahren über Nachhaltigkeit reden, doch sehr gut. Aber natürlich ist es auch bei uns ein ambitioniertes Ziel. Die Digitalisierung wird einen eigenen Beitrag dazu leisten können, denn dort wird anders diskutiert und wir haben auch andere Möglichkeiten, heute Nachhaltigkeit umzusetzen, unter anderem, indem wir uns eben auch mit anderen Ländern, anderen Kulturen vernetzen und dafür auch dann gemeinsame Formate schaffen. Und die Corona-Pandemie, auch das war bei uns ein ganz großes Thema, hat natürlich gezwungen, alle Bildungssysteme darauf anzupassen, dass wir eben jetzt neue technologische Entwicklungen haben. Auch das ist unter Nachhaltigkeitsgesichtspunkten ein ganz, ganz großes Thema. Hochschulbereich und Schulbereich haben im letzten Jahr große Fortschritte in diesem Bereich gemacht. Aber eben auch der außerschulische Bildungsbereich ist für uns da ein großes Thema, war auch im letzten Jahr in großer Not. Und deswegen haben wir auch da in Deutschland einige Förderungen auf den Weg gebracht. Bildung und insbesondere auch Bildung für nachhaltige Entwicklung lebt in Deutschland auch sehr vom ehrenamtlichen Engagement, von der Beteiligung außerhalb unserer klassischen Strukturen. Und die BNE-Akteure setzen deshalb besonders auch mit der Frage des Verhältnisses zwischen Digitalisierung und BNE sich gerade stark auseinander. Das wäre vielleicht auch ein spannendes Thema für eine mögliche nächste Konferenz.
Dankeschön. Thank you very much, and see you later in the 3 days conference. Now let me turn to Minister Aguda from Japan, please. The shorter the better, Minister. Thank you.
Sorry. ESDs.
In considering ESD to achieve the SDGs, what is most important is for the entire world to promote ESD. While solving issues domestically is of course important, domestic activities alone will not bring us to achieving the SDGs. For that as a reason, Japan gives importance to driving ESD in the entire world under the new framework of ESD for 2030, working together with UNESCO Secretariat. Specifically, through the contribution to the Japanese Funds in Trust, we are to provide various support for promoting ESD, such as assisting formulation of country initiatives, building network among ESD stakeholders, and promoting female education. On the domestic front, in the national curriculum standards, nurturing of builders of a sustainable society is clearly stated as a goal. The government created a guide to promoting ESD for the teachers to use at their schools. To coincide with the start of ESD for 2030, we will have a new ESD national implementation plan developed this month. The new national implementation plan clearly states that ESD contributes to the achievement of all the 17 SDGs and is calling for specific actions. Driving ESD globally and enhancement of network among various ESD stakeholders are also aimed at in the plan. Under the ESD for 2030 as a new framework, Japan will continue to drive ESD both in and outside of Japan based on the new national implementation plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Aguda, and I'm giving the floor immediately to Secretary Ruto from Kenya, please.
Thank you very much. The unity of policies and practice is very important as we are thinking of going ahead, both national, in terms of the national priorities and also international responsibilities. And I had mentioned a number of the practices, so let me just focus on some of the policies that we have. We do have a national policy on ESD, an education sector policy on ESD, and a national implementation strategy for ESD. These are very important in terms of charting our way forward, but also enhancing and encouraging the multi-agency collaboration and coordination of all actors that we feel are very important, because the environment, it is critical in education, but all the other ministries of education must also be in sync. So that is the first thing that I'd like to talk about. The second one, and in order to, as a continuation of some of the reforms that are happening, we are in a major educational reform in this country. Many know about the curriculum reforms, but there's a huge educational reform. And one of the reforms that I had not mentioned earlier on is the reforms in the teacher education. And this is very critical because we also want that in the schools, we have a pedagogical approach that recognizes and encourages education for sustainability. And this starts small, whether in terms of using learning materials that are from the environment that build rather than destroy. And so when as a teaching approach, we have the ethos of promoting this, and the curriculum has got the standards and curriculum content that encourages the children, then there will be the unity of both the formal and informal curriculum that we're talking about. So let me stop at that, unity of the policies and continuing on with the reforms that bring together the people and the planet.
Thank you. Clear message. Now giving the floor to Minister Marie Levin from Suriname, please.
Thank you very much. Let me say upfront that for this big transformation, we need deep structural changes in our educational system here in Suriname. Part of our ESD roadmap relies heavily on 4 major actors. Policy-wise, as we speak, we are moving from a content-based system to a learner-centered education system. We are adopting in our education policies UNESCO's approach to ESD to enable learners to live what they learn and learn what they live. We are currently undergoing a curriculum reform where we are incorporating the SDGs and global citizenship values as a cross-cutting theme throughout all the subjects. And we are creating multidisciplinary and scientific inquiry-based projects. Emphasis is on the theme of the Amazon forest. This will be disseminated to primary level teachers and schools. And I invite teachers, students, and researchers from all your countries to join us in Suriname to save our Amazon forest, which is a very large part of the country. Mutual research would be very welcome. We seriously are creating more support for our teachers, especially those in far-reaching communities. Technical and vocational education is a new track there is a new track on green careers, and that is in development. Also here, we are inviting you to cooperate with us to develop all these green careers in Latin America and the Caribbean. Students can actively create a greening economy and society, and these new fields can broaden their horizons and make a difference. Suriname commits itself to promote ESD approach in our Caribbean community through, of course, our General Secretariat here in the Caribbean community, and share resources and initiatives that can be benefit to us all. Finally, in essence, our Surinamese roadmap focuses on providing opportunities for teachers and learners to experience sustainable development in action. We want them to experiment development firsthand. Learning is not about being right or wrong, or being intelligent or not, but to be fulfilled, have a meaningful life, a sustainable livelihood, contribute to the bigger world, and feel responsible for our one home, our planet. So let's collaborate all together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister Levin. And now I'm giving the floor to Minister Al Ahmadi, UAE, to close this first roundtable. Thank you.
Regarding the implementation of the ESD in the education system, we have been doing it with the reform, and we are continuing improving, enhancing. But honestly, I would like to emphasize is how can we measure and quantify the learner and the educator of their implementation in the school. And we have taken extra initiative recently in the UAE to make sure that there is really a work and hand-on and experience in doing this in the classroom and in the universities. In the school, we have created like something called the Capstone Project for grade 4 and 8 and 11 and 12, where they work on real problem that is in the UAE or the globally that is facing, and they do their own research and they work on it, and they submit their solution and they get evaluated. So really they get a hand-on experience and feeling about what the work and really what is the challenges, and they become like working with the environment, understanding the risk and their solution. And this becomes their ambition for the future. So we ignite their interest to continue in that direction. The other thing, we encourage the high school graduate to go to the university, like in grade 11 or 10, they spend like 1 month or a summer camp in the university research lab. And they get exposed to the advanced research that the university is carrying to resolve challenges in agriculture or in water or in the environments, and or new material or new sciences that we see there is a way forward in it that will give us an edge or give us more sustainability in the future. The vocational technical education is the core of it because they are really the people who are going to work and use it in their practice. And sustainability and reusable material is the essence of educating the people and preserving the resources and the environment. What is remaining, honestly, is the long life learning. People who are not part of the education system, who left the education system, how can you work with them and educate them and enable them? And this requires multidisciplinary cooperation from different ministries, NGOs, the private sector working together to create this momentum in the nation. And I think this is a good experience we are having here in UAE, and we are very happy and glad to share it with the others. And lastly, I would like to express Expo is coming, and Expo is going to be a state-of-the-art example of sustainability. And I would love to see you all coming in Expo 2020 to see in action, in life, how we are the whole world is working in sustainability and in the future and in the environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, as well for the invitation to the Expo, Dubai, of course. Let me thank all of you, dear panelists, for inspiring vision you share with us, pointing out challenges and solutions. And we are very, very grateful for your contributions today and your leadership, which is essential to translate in practice all these principles we share and we are committed to. Now, before we turn to our second distinguished panel, I would like to invite you briefly to join me in the launch of a major new publication that we have prepared on the occasion of this conference. It's about the report, Learn for Our Planet, a global review of how environmental issues are integrated in education. The rationale behind this report is a very simple one. To make progress on ESD, we must know where we currently stand. And while knowledge on the progress of countries on education for sustainable development has been increasing, there is still a great need for more understanding of how, whether countries address ESD and environmental and sustainability issues in education, in particular with regard to climate change and biodiversity loss. So to briefly present of the main findings of the report, it's my great pleasure now to invite Professor Aaron Benavot, the University at Albany State of New York, and former director of UNESCO GEM report. Professor Benavot prepared the report together with Professor Marcia McKenzie, University of Saskatchewan. And Aaron, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Giannini, and all the distinguished conference participants for this opportunity to present key findings from UNESCO's new publication entitled Learn for Our Planet, a global review of how environmental issues are integrated in education. This publication analyzes the extent to which environmental issues are integrated in official, primary, and secondary education policies and curricula in nearly 50 UNESCO member states from all world regions. The research was complemented by 20 in-depth interviews with key national and regional experts, as well as a global online survey of nearly 1,600 education personnel, mainly school teachers and principals, about education for sustainable development, which was conducted in 3 languages between September and November of last year. From the analyses of these materials, several significant findings emerge. First, the depth of integrating environmental issues in country policies and curricula is quite low, indeed little more than superficial. 45% of the educational policy and curricular documents that we studied made very little or no reference to environmental themes. Only 17% of the documents studied contained even a moderate focus on environmental themes. Second, more than half of the national education policies and curricula studied made no mention of climate change. Only 19% made reference to biodiversity. Countries are making reference to the environment and sustainability in general. 83% of the policies and curricula studied referred to the notion of environment at least once, and 69% mentioned sustainability. Third, over a third of the more than 1,500 respondents to our online survey indicated no inclusion of environment-related content in either pre-service or in-service teacher training programs. ESD themes such as ocean conservation, marine life, desertification, and extreme weather were least likely to be included in teacher training or professional development opportunities. Climate change, water, biodiversity, and air pollution were slightly more likely to be included. The picture emerging from these and additional results reported in the new publication is quite clear. We in the global education policy community are not doing enough to ensure that what we expect teachers to teach and students to learn addresses the urgent environmental challenges we are facing. Instances of good practice in policy and curricula, as reported by interviewees and some respondents, and clearly made reference to ministers in the previous session, are not being sufficiently translated into clear and well-integrated country policies and curricular expectations and lesson plans. Our recommendation is that much more emphasis needs to be given to environmental themes in education. In particular, there needs to expand attention to and training in education as it relates to climate change and biodiversity. Environmental learning should be integrated across the curriculum at all education levels. ESD themes need to be taught with a holistic pedagogy that goes beyond an exclusive focus on cognitive knowledge and scientific fact and aims to engage students socially and emotionally and in action-oriented learning and in participation about and in the environment. Both whole sector and whole institutional approaches are needed. Educational and curricular policies need to prioritize the comprehensive integration of environmental themes in everyday school life and draw on contributions by community actors, parents, and civil society organizations. Ministries of education and the environment need to work together to ensure that all teachers and school leaders are versed in ESD and are prepared to convert their understandings into transformative learning opportunities. And finally, it is critical that national governmental actors in both the environmental and education sectors better collaborate to raise ambitions and advocate action through global benchmarks, regulations, policies, programs, and events focused on education and the environment. We hope that this publication will motivate positive change through enhanced global commitments to education for sustainable development and climate change, and that when 2030 arrives, education will continue to support how we learn for our planet. My colleague, Professor Marcy McKenzie, and I invite you to read the new publication, and thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Benavot, and thanks all of you, Professor McKenzie as well. I suppose that the report will be really an excellent basis for our work in the coming years, together with our new ESD for 2030 roadmap. Thank you very much. joining us. Well, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we now turn to the second distinguished panel today to discuss the way forward for ESD. To moderate the panel, I'm pleased to hand over to my colleague, Vibeke Jensen, Director of the Division for Peace and Sustainable Development at UNESCO. Vibeke, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Stefania. And good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone, and a very warm welcome to this second panel, where I'm delighted to have 4 distinguished speakers with me, all representing important stakeholders in ESD and transformative education. So let me first welcome Professor Jeffrey Sachs, Director, the Center for Sustainable Development at Columbia University, and President of the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and one of UNESCO's very close partners in promoting SDG Target 4.7. I'm also pleased to welcome Andreas Schleicher, Director of Education and Special Advisor on Education Policy to the Secretary General of the OECD. As you all know, OECD plays a major role in policy advice and promoting quality and innovative education. And we are delighted to have Susan Hopgood. Good evening, Susan, President, Education International. EI, the global voice of teachers, has long been promoting ESD with its constituency and has now in particular scaled up its advocacy for climate education. And last but not least, Eleanor Terralonge, who has founded and directs the Climate Change Youth Council, a volunteer group in Jamaica. She's also a Jamaica Prime Minister's Youth Awardee for Environmental Protection. So a warm welcome to all of you. And just as we have been, the process we have been through during the first panel, I will also ask you 2 questions. The first question is what you identify or your organizations identify as the 2-3 main sustainability challenges that the world is facing and how they can be addressed by ESD. And I'm kindly asking you to stick to the 3 minutes allocated for this first round of interventions. So without further delay, Professor Sachs, I hand the floor to you. Over to you, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Vibeke, and thanks to UNESCO and all of the sponsors, the German government, for this important meeting. I'm really honored to be part of it. The 2 crucial goals are the SDGs and the Paris Agreement. These are the 2 goals that the world set, one for the year 2030 and the other for mid-century. We have a rendezvous with destiny. And so far, we're, of course, far off course, desperately behind in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and far off track in achieving climate safety. Thank God for young people. They want to do more. They need the tools. That's what education for sustainable development is about. I think, though, we ought to give a sense of both the urgency and the opportunity regarding education itself. Even before COVID-19, hundreds of millions of young people were not enabled to finish an upper secondary education. The situation was not acceptable in any way. More than 250 million young people of school age were not in school. COVID-19 has, of course, profoundly disrupted all parts of society, but education among them. We have hundreds of millions of kids who have had a disastrous year. And this, I think, has to be a front reality for us. We can't achieve ESD if we can't achieve E. If kids are not in school, how are they going to be in school learning sustainable development? And I think we need to focus on this with some realism. Poor countries are facing extraordinary budget squeezes. What are we doing, the finance ministries, the international financial institutions, and the education ministers, to ensure that there is financing for education, much less for education for sustainable development? I'm extremely worried about it because I've been worried about inadequate financing for education for 20 years. And now the situation is even more urgent. And we need the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the regional development banks, the finance ministers, especially of the rich countries, to work together with the governments in the low-income countries and in the lower middle-income countries to ensure that there are budgets for education and that kids are back in school. And one important positive part of this that I want to emphasize, as has been mentioned by Minister Karliczek and others, is the empowerment from digital, extraordinarily important. I think we cannot achieve ESD without kids being availed of online educational tools. But we know half the kids in the world or more are not online right now, not because this isn't feasible, but because they're too poor to have the devices or the data access. So I want to stress that when we think about the budget issues, which for me are going to be front and center for the next 2 years as we climb out of this crisis, we need to get kids online. We need to get schools online. It's only through online that we're going to be able to accelerate the curriculum access. It's only through online that we're going to be able to train teachers at scale. Otherwise, we're talking about nice initiatives that by 2035 or 2040 will begin to reach poor countries, but they will not succeed on the timeline of the Sustainable Development Goals. They will leave this generation desperately behind. So I want to ask UNESCO and all of the colleagues and all of the education ministers, let's get serious in the coming 2 years about education budgets, especially in poor countries. Let's face the fact that in sub-Saharan Africa, the completion rate for upper secondary, even before COVID, was 25%. But under SDG 4, it's supposed to be 100% by the year 2030. And now many kids have not even had a school year this past year. So I regard this as absolutely essential. Let me just end by, if I could, Viveke, just as Andreas is about to come on, perhaps the strongest correlation that we have is good PISA scores turn into good economic growth. This is an extraordinarily strong relationship, but let me put it in a different way. Poor PISA scores mean countries cannot achieve development, much less sustainable development. So I want to ask Andreas, as I get off, I want PISA for every country so that we can track every country. And I want to put ESD into PISA evaluation. Of course, it's partly there already. But then I really hope that we can be serious about digital access and about budgets so that the PISA scores can be raised everywhere to ensure sustainable development everywhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this very powerful statement, Professor Sachs. And I don't know if you have looked at my notes here, but I am actually going to turn to Andreas Schleicher now and hand you the floor. And please, 3 minutes, Andreas. Over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to thank UNESCO also for the long-standing engagement for education for sustainable development. Actually, even long before this became such a topical issue. And if I could see my slides, please. Of course, there are lots of steps we can and need to take in the short term to address the sustainability challenges. But we're not going to win this race without deeply investing in changing human behavior. And that's really what the education story is about. At the surface, sustainability has made it into school curricula. And that's also what we just heard in the first panel. You can see here among countries, over 80% of school principals say their schools deal with, climate change, global warming, poverty, migration. But, things look quite different when you actually look at this through the lens of students. And in our latest PISA survey, over 3/4 of 15-year-olds said that the climate agenda is important and urgent to them. So that's really important. But when we ask them, do you feel you can do something about it? The bars get a lot shorter. And this is the core of education for sustainable development, empowering young people to mobilize their cognitive, social, emotional resources to actually take action. And, as we are in Berlin today, nowhere is this contrast more visible than in the case of Germany. Most young people in Germany are highly aware of the climate agenda, but just a minority feel that, that agency and empowerment to make a personal difference. Now, to me, that is where education for sustainable development really must make a difference now. And knowledge about the environment obviously is a central part of this. You can see here, Singaporean students excel, when they had to explain how carbon dioxide emissions affect global climate change. Now, that's great, but, knowledge is just one side. Look here, just a minority of 15-year-old Singaporeans said they would choose certain products for ethical or environmental reasons when they're a bit more expensive. So even top education performers have a lot of homework to do. And in education for sustainable development, we'll always need to strike a balance between helping students keep the world in balance, but also resilience, enabling them to live in an imbalanced world. And when it comes to resilience, you can see that the majority of 15-year-olds say, I can change my behavior to meet, new situations. I can deal with unusual situations. But fewer seem to be ready to adapt to a new culture. And what's interesting, in some of the highest performing education systems, when it comes to mathematics and science, systems like Vietnam or Macau, they are amazing. But they have a long way to go when it comes to building that students' resilience. On the other hand, you can see countries like, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Mexico, Turkey. Students are not so great on the academic subjects, but they somehow feel prepared to navigate ambiguity and manage uncertainty. And I think ESD really needs to be about getting this balance right. And there are lots of ways of how we can act on this in education. Most obviously, it is about providing young people with the scientific knowledge and skills that underpin, a green economy. I already spoke about this. And according to our PISA data, knowledge about the science of the climate agenda was also the best predictor for the attitudes and behavior of young people. So we won't get around this. But education can also shape the individual behavior that influences, political commitment, whether this is about financing parties or social activism. Now, it can also shape the behavior that impacts local communities, volunteering, community services. We need to sort of build that into education for sustainable development. Very importantly, it can shape individual behavior that can influence, business practices. This is about, changes in consumption patterns, in lifestyle patterns, personal investment choices, employment choices. And last but not least, our own behavior can obviously influence the behavior of others. This is why education is so central to this agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andreas, for this very, very interesting presentation. And we'll get back to you in a few minutes. But let me turn to Susan Hopgood now. I think it's late already at your end, Susan. So the floor is yours without further delay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks very much for Becky. Let me offer today two critical challenges to start with: climate change and inequality. But first, let's acknowledge that the only way forward for sustainable development is through an interconnected web of progress. Eliminating poverty and hunger is impossible without education, gender equality, and decent work. Health and well-being is tied directly to climate change, reduced inequality, and peace, justice, and strong institutions. Climate change is an immediate and existential threat to the planet. I'm speaking to you this evening from my home in Australia. And a university study in February surveyed Australian ecosystems, including mangroves in the north, the Great Barrier Reef off our east coast, and the alpine ash forests in the south. The study found 19 of these ecosystems, including the 3 I mentioned, met the criteria to be described as collapsing, meaning change in a substantial negative way from their original state and unlikely to recover. And yet the Australian government has refused to commit to its timetable to zero net emissions, despite being one of the world's largest emitters on a per capita basis. And as the birthplace of the Murdoch media empire, Australia is among the world's most prolific exporters of deception, misinformation, and outright lies about climate science. But we know the truth. 5 of the 10 most endangered nations due to climate change are in my region: Japan, Philippines, India, Sri Lanka, and Fiji. It's one reason why the meeting early this year of the Asia Pacific Climate Change Adaptation Forum was the 7th annual convening. And among their findings is the disproportionate impact climate change has on the most vulnerable populations. And I quote, "Environmental changes are undermining hard-won development gains by causing economic costs and millions of premature deaths annually. They are impeding progress towards ending poverty and hunger, reducing inequalities, and promoting sustainable economic growth, work for all, and peaceful and inclusive societies." End quote. This is the science. These are the facts. And education for sustainable development first must provide our students the inspiration and the tools and the grit to achieve literacy on these subjects. Because we cannot escape the context. Ours is an era of lies and deliberate misinformation used as weapons of deadly partisanship and growing authoritarianism. And to move forward, education must support students to think critically about the current system of unsustainable policies and inequitable outcomes, and take action to build a better world. For climate action, we need young people that have scientific knowledge, are critical thinkers, have the skills to determine fact from fiction, and know their rights and feel empowered to fight for truth and justice. But let's start by being realistic. The responsibility lies with governments. Only a strong and well-financed public sector with vision and regulatory muscle and public support can bring us back from this brink. In the end, the fundamental lessons of sustainable development are the lessons of democracy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan, for these great and important insights. And it's now my pleasure to turn to Eleanor Teralongi from Jamaica, the other end of the world. What is your take, Eleanor, on the first question? Think you may still be muted.
All right, are you hearing me now?
Very well, thank you.
Okay,
yes.
Great. So I'm not sure what happened. So I was saying good morning. Thank you so much for having me. Good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. So I'm going to quickly give my perspective from living in Jamaica, which is a small island developing state. I think our climate reality here is a lot more urgent than other countries. Not that it's not urgent across the world, but I think for us it's a little bit more urgent just based on how badly we are already being affected. So for me, when I look at the global picture, the challenges that really concern me are, first of all, food and water security. I think that when we're talking about climate change, that's a part of the conversation that needs to be at the forefront. And also, as some of my previous presenters would have mentioned, protection of vulnerable communities. So whether it is vulnerable communities on the global scale, so comparing us small island developing states to other countries, or whether it is locally or vulnerable populations, so poor persons, people in rural communities, people without access to education, because we're talking about education conversation, we're talking about poor persons not being able to access devices. But in addition to that, we also have an infrastructure problem here in Jamaica. So even if you are able to afford certain devices, if you live in certain areas, the infrastructure for the internet still isn't there. So, you know, it's a number of issues that we're kind of dealing with at the same time. But I want to kind of tie it back to us as young people, because we're the generation that really has to live climate change. We're the ones that have to feel the effects of it. We're the ones that really have to champion solutions if we want to create a world for us to live in, for our children to live in, and for future generations to live in. And for us, we really need to be a lot more intentional about how we do education for sustainable development. So I know in other countries, you know, there'll be a lot more advanced in terms of how that type of education is done, as opposed to us here in Jamaica, it's done in a very ad hoc way. So for example, within our council, we do a certain amount of informal education, but there's nothing really integrated into the school system. And of course, when you don't have that sort of institutionalized education, then of course you're going to be missing some young people. So that's basically it for the first question. I think that I'll just stop here and then we can talk a little bit more.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eleanor, and for also not only bringing in the youth perspective, but also the SIDS perspective on the conversation. Very good. So we don't have so much time left, but it is indeed my pleasure, though, to go back to Professor Sachs and Jeff, just ask you if you, in sort of 2 minutes, can share with us what your organization plans are in addressing these issues.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You know, as you know, the Sustainable Development Solutions Network is working together with UNESCO, with the Vatican, with the Ban Ki-moon Center, with Columbia University, and with other partners to develop, help develop the rapid spread of the new curricula and to campaign for the connectivity and the financing that we need. Please listen to what Eleanor just said. She said in Jamaica, there is not the connectivity to be able to carry out this education. This is a phenomenon all over the world. We cannot stop with nice platitudes here. We have urgency. I think we could turn everything over to Eleanor and the problem would get solved a lot faster. This is probably the case. I do think Susan Hopgood had a great idea. Maybe we could put Rupert Murdoch back in school. Maybe we could flunk him as one of the most miserable people on the planet and have him stop spreading the false information together with his miserable son, Lachlan Murdoch. He pollutes our country completely with with disinformation. But what we really need to do is scale up this activity, and that means money. And please, let's work together to look at real budgets, real mobilization, because the finance ministers right now, I was with the Vatican yesterday on this issue, with the head of the International Monetary Fund today in Paris as a meeting with the African leaders. We need financing. Otherwise, maybe some rich countries will finally get on this case, but this will not be the world success that is needed. So I want to underscore that our Mission 4.7 project will help to mobilize the financing needed so that in all parts of the world, children are in school, they're completing upper secondary education, they're receiving the technical training, they are online, and their teachers are online as well, so that the teachers can be bolstered in their technical training as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for these insights and again, a very powerful set of messages. Andreas.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, actually, we do what Jeffrey Sachs just suggested. We are building, education for sustainable development into the PISA metrics, into the metrics through which we look at success. And we believe that is crucially important. We will not improve what we cannot see. Now, we cannot, on the one hand, tell teachers, care about education for sustainable development. And then at the end of they say, but, all we're going to make visible is your success in mathematics and science. So making these measures part of the metrics is very important. And this is less of a contradiction than it seems to many. The knowledge about the environment is very important. But it's at the same time also important to take a holistic approach. If young people drink a cup of coffee in Berlin, do they understand this? Because of implications for the conditions of work of people, in South America. I think this global awareness is very, very crucial. What is also, in our view, very important part of this is, are young people, willing and able to see the world through different lenses and perspectives, appreciate different ways of thinking, different ways of working, different cultures. And then, very important, can people mobilize their knowledge? Now, this is the crucial test of our times. We know a lot, but actually whether we can mobilize our cognitive, social, and emotional resources, that is a test of truth. And actually that's going to be the core of the future PISA assessment.
Andreas, could I come in and just ask you, could we get every country incorporated into PISA? Because we need a global metric system, including the poor countries.
Yeah, actually, on the positive side, we have now walking towards 100 countries, and the PISA system is open to countries. We're actually also very actively supporting countries in Africa and Central America, South Asia at this point, actually to build, the infrastructure to reliably measure their educational progress. So we're all working on the same goal. I do agree with you. It's only going to work if it becomes a truly global kind of effort.
Thank you so much, Andreas, and thank you, Jeff, for helping me to moderate. Let me pass the floor the mic quickly to Susan. Susan, over to you.
Yes, thanks. And I'm not going to get into the discussion about PISA across the world, but look, can I just say on behalf of the world's teachers and education workers, we remain committed as ever to our students' right to receive a quality education that prepares them for the future. And this commitment for us is infused into Education International's Teach for the Planet campaign, which we launched on Earth Day to put climate literacy and justice on the agenda of every nation this year. We believe in climate education. We believe in climate education based on science and with a civic action focus. And we believe that should be as fundamental as teaching, reading, and writing. And the fight against climate change must have an education face and a teacher's voice in every area of the world. So our campaign calls on governments to ensure that every student leaves school climate literate and equipped with the skills and knowledge needed to tackle climate change, adapt to uncertainties, and to take part in building a more sustainable future. We're working with our organisations in more than 178 countries to get them to share their experiences, learn from each other in order to better support their members through collaborations, networking, and professional development. And I could say more, but I know we've run out of time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Susan, and thanks for all the excellent work that EI is doing in this area. Now, we're going to end this round of panel discussions, and what is better than ending with Eleanor, a young person, to share with us her and her organization's plan for the future. Eleanor, over to you.
Okay, no pressure. So as you would have mentioned, the Jamaica Climate Change Youth Council, we're a volunteer organization. So we have young people coming in who are, have some kind of interest in climate change. But what we have found is that, and even when I got started, a lot of times we're aware of climate change, but we don't understand how much of a holistic issue it is, how many social and economic implications there are. So what we try to do is when young people come in, we kind of give them a very basic education. I know it sounds basic, but I think it's been really important. So climate science, understanding how the international negotiations work, topics like environmental justice, especially for us in Jamaica, tying environmentalism to sustainable development, teaching people about the SDGs. So we do that in a sort of informal way because we do it on our own. We're not funded by the government, but as a volunteer organization, there's only so many young people that we can reach because we tend to reach young people that are already interested in climate change. So it's about bridging that gap to reach the rest of the population. So we are in discussions with the Climate Change Ministry and the Education Ministry to really look at a framework about institutionalizing this education that we spoke about. And there's actually quite a bit of political will behind it. So I'm kind of optimistic that we will actually be able to put a framework together and over the next couple of years kind of phase that into our existing education system.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eleanor, and thank you so much to all four of you for being with us here today. Thank you for all these excellent presentations and messages and insights you have shared with us. I'm delighted that we're not closing here, but we have another 2.5 days to continue the conversations. But thank you for helping us to get started so well. So with these words, I will hand the mic back to our overall moderator for the entire conference, Sumi. And again, thank you so much to you all. Thank you. And a big applause.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vibeke Jensen, and to all of our panelists for a very lively and fruitful discussion. Now, we have the opportunity at this moment to take a brief break, but before you do take a break, I just want to make you aware of a few points. First of all, this platform has been built to make sure that you have a lot of access to activities and exhibitions during the breaks as well. So if you want to network, we have a space for that in the Berlin Lounge. You can go there, and using a platform called WonderMe, you can network either informally or formally on a certain number of topics that UNESCO has selected as the pillars of this conference, as the main topics and themes. So there you can network. We encourage you to do so. Coming up right after our brief break, we'll have the first ministerial round table, and you don't want to miss this. This is where we're going to hear some of the country-level challenges and commitments. So that will be a key part of the conference just after our break. Another point I want to alert you to is that at around 4:30 Central, which is later in the afternoon, just about an hour or two from now, we'll be opening the Education for SDGs Marketplace. Now, this is a virtual exhibition that has live sessions. This has online booths as well. This is as if you were here at an exhibition, visiting different booths. This is the virtual version of it. There are stakeholders from around the world who are going to be showcasing their projects and their initiatives. You can go visit essentially virtually. There are live sessions that are part of this marketplace. So if you have the opportunity, visit that today, and we'll have that open also through the course of the conference. And last point from me before we go into this break, tonight is the Berlin night. This is another opportunity for networking hosted by the German Ministry of Education and Research, and we'll have a special musical performance there. And to give you a taste of that, the artist Doreen Ben David, you'll hear from her now as we head into the break, and we'll see you back here at the top of the hour.
Dear participants of the UNESCO World Conference on Education for Sustainable Development, my name is Doreen, this is my good friend Johnny, and we're here today to delight you with some live music. We hope you enjoy it. The moment I wake up, before I put on my makeup, I say a little prayer for you. And while I comb in my hair now, and I'm wondering what dress to wear now, I say a little prayer for you. Forever and ever, you stay in my heart, and I will love you forever and ever. We'll never will part, or how I love you together. together. That's how it must be. To live without you would only mean heartbreak for me. I run for the bus, dear, and while riding I think of us, dear. I say a little pray for you. At work I just take time, and although my coffee break time, I say a little pray for you. Forever and ever you stay in my heart, and I will love you forever and ever. We'll never will part. On how I love you together, together. That's how it must be. To live without you would only mean heartbreak for me. My darling, believe me, for me there is no one but you. Please love me too. I'm in love with you. Answer my prayer now, babe. Say you love me too. This is my prayer now, babe. Oh, forever and ever you stay in my heart, and I will love you forever and ever. We'll never will part. On how I love you together, together. That's how it must be. To live without you would only mean heartbreak for me.
Music brings the world together, and UNESCO has brought the world together on education for sustainable development. We wish you a successful and lively conference.